Welcome to Love Where You Live, a podcast where we have conversations about how awesome it is to live in Boulder County, actually. And today, I'm very pleased to announce and show you that I'm sitting with my good friend Tyler Butterfield. And a lot of you guys that are listening already know this name, you know this person. But I want to lead with this because I think before I dive into the accolades and the description and the laurels, all the accomplishments of Tyler, I'll say this universally. I hear this from everyone that knows him, is that he is a genuine, likable, humble, and fun guy just to be around. And for me, that I echo that, and I say, Tyler, thank you for bringing all of that great energy and that vibe to our show today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I was going to say, don't ask my wife and kids. They'll give you a different description of me.
We'll get to that, because I think next I'll ask you if we can please have your wife and or kids on the show. So that's hilarious. We all have different vibes. So the family sees one, but I have a feeling you're a pretty awesome guy to be around, and I want to share with others that don't know you, that are tuning in, saying who's Tyler Butterfield, and please correct me where I go off course. But from what I know, you're a two-time Olympian. You're a former professional cyclist, a former professional triathlete. You are have a top 10 finish in Kona. You have an Ironman win. You also went to multiple Commonwealth Games. I don't know how many, you'll have to tell me, but you did that in 3 different sports: cycling, running, and triathlon. So this is the athlete version, right? Does that sum it up? Did I miss a lot?
No, that's pretty much spot on.
That's spot on. Yeah. And you're so humble, and I love this because that's something that is super cool, accomplished. You've obviously got the chops, but you're not bragging about that. That was kind of it. Did I leave anything off?
No, not at all.
Not
like my races that I'm most excited about, sometimes one was a junior race. Like, it wasn't always the pro races. And it's easy to be humble in Boulder. Like, that's one of the reasons we moved here. It's because of how many good athletes there were. Like, that was a draw. Like, we were moving to the U.S. We lived in Girona.
I love that.
And we were like, we got to move to the U.S. And it's like, you move to Boulder because that's where the best were, or are still.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to be humble when, like, sure, top 10, but I mean, you got a top 10, and yesterday I was riding with someone who got fourth, and you wave at someone who's won it, and it's easy to be put in your place when you're around great athletes.
So that right there, I think, is what you just said is, I think, comes back to you as a humble athlete. It's not easy for some people to be around greatness and be humble. Sometimes it's hard. You're like, I'm just as good. Puff myself up. Either way, let's go back, because I want to come to this. I like to kind of go chronologically. So you're from Bermuda, which most of us don't know much about. If you're not from Bermuda, it's a really cool spot. But also, I want to hear what it was like growing up, and just with the preface of your Jim and Debbie. Like, I've met them. Jim was an Olympian, your dad. Your mom was an international great at the marathon, 4th in Boston, if I remember correctly, 2:38 before super shoes, before anyone could run that fast. So the women really weren't doing that. So 2 superstar parents, Bermuda. What was it like growing up?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And again, I'll jump forward, even though
Totally fine.
It shows how great Boulder is. The fact that we could easily, as a family, live in Bermuda. And my wife's from Australia. We could live in the Gold Coast of Australia. So I'm jumping around to some of your questions and stuff. I know it's coming, but growing up in Bermuda, it was a dream childhood. I don't have very many bad things to say, and if anything went wrong, it was my own doing. It was like, hey, you're a 10-year-old kid and you stole something. It's like, you're going to get in trouble. And I learned my lessons early there. But yeah, I mean, so the Bermuda's in miles, 21 square miles, and it's basically on average 21 long by 1 wide. 70,000 people. It's gone down a little, I think. Very multicultural. My mom was born and raised in Denver. My dad born and raised in Bermuda. They met in Boston. They were both going to school there. And yeah, so I got as well. I got to know quickly that, like, in Bermuda, it was a great place to live, and I got quite good at sport. But my parents were like, yeah, this is a small country. You're good in a small country. Yeah. Go test yourself. And so I got to go to, like, its closest point of land is Virginia. It's not in the Caribbean.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a lot higher north. But we get to do all the races in the Caribbean if we want. We get to do Caribbean Champs. We get to do Commonwealth. We get to do Pan American. It literally is. If you haven't been there, go to Bermuda. I'll put the sales out there for Bermuda as well as Boulder today. But yeah, it was a dream childhood. I mean, I got to live on a boat. We were supposed to be 12 to have a boat, but at 10, my brother was 12, and so we had a little 5 horsepower, and my mom was like, "Be home for dinner."
Wow.
And so yeah, it was pretty amazing. It's a tiny island.
So it's you and your brother. And,
yeah, I just got two.
Yep, there's 2. You guys, the boat. But what else? Like when you're 5, 6, 8, 10 years old, what are you doing outside of school?
Yeah, so we'd go to school. I was thinking about that the other day. We'd walk home. We lived close enough to school.
Okay.
You could walk home. We grew up not locking our doors, which some of that was just generational. Like you just didn't.
Yeah, it's true.
And yeah, it was. On the weekends we had a little BMX bike. We'd go out. And we had with the neighborhood kids, and there would be 20 of us, and yeah, I mean, doing what kids do, like getting in a little bit of trouble, like jumping fences and taking oranges from an orange field, and but yeah, it was just a dream childhood.
That's it. You said that. That sounds. I love that. You okay? So ripping around on bikes and crashing probably and jumping things. What about? Did you play soccer, cricket? I don't know, football, anything like that?
Yeah, so the sports in Bermuda, the biggest sports are soccer and cricket. I did do soccer.
Okay.
We did at school. We'd play all the sports. I played in an after school soccer program. When you say humble, my brother's actually the more talented athlete. So growing up, like he swam and he started a little earlier. And so then when I was 8, I got put in swimming.
Okay.
But he quit. And so when he quit, I quit. But he quit after like 3 years, and I quit after 1 because I was 2 years.
Okay.
He's 2 years my senior.
Right.
But he quit because he was 10, 11, and he was swimming with like 13-year-olds because he was talented.
So
they kept putting him up a lane. So he had no fun. And then we got into motocross for a little while, and I was terrible at that. I'm not. If anyone goes mountain biking with me, they'll be like, "This guy cannot descend."
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, almost you name it, we did it. I mean, there's no guns in Bermuda, so we didn't like shoot BB guns, but there was a little island we'd go to and build forts on the boat, and no parents, and it was just it's a very unique place, and it's sort of hard to describe without a picture. Like I'd suggest Googling it. You suddenly look at pictures. Someone was over I think it was the plumber the other day was over looking at our house and asking, and I showed him a picture, and it's an overhead picture of the whole country.
Right.
And it's just an island. And they're like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. There's my house there. You can sort of pick. Wow. There's the airport, and there's the other end. And
small town.
It's tiny. And but it has so much. Like I got into triathlon because of my parents. So my dad went to the Olympics for rowing. He went to a boarding school in Canada.
Okay.
And again, Bermuda is very multicultural. So he went to Canada because his mother was from Canada.
Okay.
A lot go to the UK because they have family over in the UK. My brother went to the East Coast because my parents met in Boston.
Right.
So he went to boarding school in Boston. I stayed through to high school in Bermuda and then moved to Australia. But I didn't cause trouble. A lot of kids you sort of push your limits. You get very comfortable, and so you start to cause trouble because you're bored or comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just kids.
So you're in there kind of not causing trouble, but you've got exposure. I mean, rowing's an obscure sport unless you grew up with it. How did triathlon start for you? And
so my parents started the Triathlon Association in Bermuda. Okay. They ran they have stories about just the other day I did Boston Marathon. My mom's done it. I want to say almost 8 to 10 times.
Okay.
The first time they did it, my dad was just doing rowing training, and he just did it. Like he just jumped in. Back then, you didn't have to like qualify.
Yeah.
And so when they moved back to Bermuda, there wasn't a running association. My mom has some cool stories about like running. Yeah. And literally a car pulled over and was like, "Can I give you a lift?" She's like, "No, I'm running for fun." And they're like, Where are you going? And they're like, "No, I'm doing a loop." And
That's great.
They have some really cool stories. So I grew up with that. All right. And I grew up with the stigma of being the son of the two that started it with another family, Patty and Steve Petty. They were big. The core Steve Petty is the president of the Bermuda Triathlon Association now, and he was one who started it.
Okay.
With my parents.
Gotcha.
Like it's imagine a tiny like town in the U.S. that everyone's still there.
Sure.
Like people go away and come back. So it's very tight knit.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so they've started. Yeah. So also by default, your parents started it, so you're in. Did you, after a year of swimming and then you do triathlon, did you like it? Was it kind of like, hey, or were you just good at it and therefore you liked it?
Yes. Well, two things. I quit and tried motocross, and I realized I was bad at other stuff.
That's good.
I suddenly realized, like, hold on, accolades come easier. And it's that sort of saying, you go to path of least resistance. Swimming was never easy, but we ran in school and we'd do cross country, and I'd generally I wasn't a winner. And honestly, I never have been. I think I won 5 races as a professional. I didn't win a lot, but I was in the mix. I'd get encouragement, and people like that. Like as much as you say you don't need it, everyone wants a little pat on the back at some point.
100%. Well said. Yeah. That well said. And that's okay. So you're getting kind of the knack for it. You're terrible at other things. See, I just made it worse for you. You're terrible at motocross. No, but you're building that. And I think I know maybe the punchline, you referenced it earlier. You left Bermuda for Australia to compete, correct?
Yeah. So we had the ITU World Cup multiple years. First time I ever saw Welshie was, I think he was second or third.
Gotcha.
He didn't win. Chris McCormack stayed at my house.
Gotcha.
So by now I'm 14.
Okay.
But before then, like my mom had a sports running store. So she would also go to these running races.
Right.
Because she'd see the new shoes. The expos back then were huge. I mean, they still are, but like it was more, people would buy stuff at expo because you couldn't order it online. There was no internet.
Definitely.
It was literally at a race. You saw the new stuff. And yeah, I got out of, I didn't really love sport. It wasn't the cool thing to do at that time.
Interesting.
And I was okay at soccer, but not great.
Okay.
And I didn't like letting the team down. So that was another thing, is triathlon's an individual sport, and I liked it. Like, you train hard, you commit, you race well, it's on you.
It's on you.
And if you don't, like, there's times that I was doing running races, and there's a famous mile run in Bermuda that's called the Front Street Mile. Mm-hmm. And my brother won it, and he still has the course record for 12 and under. And then I have the record for under 16.
What was the time?
He did 5:14.
5:14 under 12? And what was yours? Under 16?
So I won that one year in 5:33. The next fastest time to my brother is 5:28 for another winner.
I love hearing these stats.
I think second place, but this is a course where they used to have 20 grand if you could break 4-minute mile.
Okay.
And so they got all the pros that were like,
right.
Hey, I got a PB of like 10 seconds under that. I can do that.
Big deal. Yeah.
And then they wouldn't, because there's 2 hairpin turns in it.
Oh, okay.
And so at under 16 and under, and so secondary school, I went 4:27 or 4:26, and I have not done a mile faster than that for the rest of my life.
Is that right? Yeah. Wow. See,
But we'd commit. We'd train for it. Like, it was televised.
It's the deal.
Everyone from school came out. So yeah, then that would be then 16. But at like from 13 or 14, I never traveled basically without my bike.
Okay.
And there'd be family trips that I'd sort of skip and go somewhere else with the Petties often to race in Florida and Claremont. Yeah. And the cool thing about Bermuda, and it sort of shows with how well Flora is done, and she might say it a bit differently, but literally I remember once doing a time trial, and then there was a 5K run. The time trials were at 7 normally, but you had like an hour because you were going a couple minutes off. The last rider would be at like 8, but there was a 9 o'clock 5K fun run.
Perfect.
And so I literally did the time trial. I knew I had to be one of the early starters, and you could do both. So one thing that Bermuda really, and I'd say Boulder's similar, especially for a U.S. standard, because you do have to drive in the U.S. a lot more.
Yes.
Is in Bermuda you could do everything.
Yeah, that's cool.
You could literally do like a soccer match and a run event right after. You could do a time trial in the morning, and then I literally didn't get in a car. I rode to the start of the run race, and a friend had running shoes. So it was sort of this this mix of anything's possible.
Yeah.
And linking that to Boulder, that's why I love here.
Right.
It's similar. Right. I now have 4 kids, and like next week, one's in a horse show, one's in a tour and a swim meet.
Yes.
You can tie everything
Yes.
together.
Yes, and that was where I fell flat on your intro, because it was all about you is sort of the current and the now. You know, you're married to your sweetheart from a long time ago, Nikki. You've got these 4 great kids. You've got dogs. You're sometimes a farmer. You're here in the community. This is like the now, but I still want to kind of build a little bit as we kind of say you obviously had an aptitude, and so now I understand a little bit more about who you are today and how you got through what I mentioned before. All these sports, you grew up, it was your thing, you were good at it, you were enjoying it. So I'm going to jump you forward then off of that. And now you said Girona. So you went to Australia, but now you're in Girona, and we're fast forward button, right? You're in. So I want to figure out, because I want to get you to Boulder. I want to kind of have the journey over. Yeah. So there's a lot of amazing stuff happened, but you're in Girona, right? In the early 2000s, you're in Girona?
Yep. So 2000, I moved,
which is in Spain, for those of you that don't know what I'm saying.
I first moved to France.
Okay.
And that led to Girona. But
gotcha.
I'll do a quick. We moved to France. We were both doing triathlon. Well, my wife Nikki was doing triathlon.
Yep.
Switched from short course to long course because
gotcha.
she couldn't swim. She won an under 23.
She could swim, just not as fast as the others.
Yeah. So she won an under 23 world title.
Okay. Right. Fast.
So ITU world champ, but under 23. But to make it in the open, you had to swim with them.
Gotcha.
She could ride up a little in under 23, but not in.
Yes.
So I moved to a cycling team. I went to the Athens Olympics at 21. Before that, I knew I had a position on the cycling team, but they gave me a wild card to the Athens Olympics, and I said, look, I can't go in 2004.
Yeah.
I can't go to the cycling team. Would they take me in 2005? I want to finish. They've offered a spot. I did well at Junior Worlds. Got on the podium there in 2002. Sort of disappeared. I wanted to make it.
Yeah.
Trained too hard, overtrained, moved back to Bermuda, worked construction for a couple of years.
Wow.
Then they were like, look, you're off the radar, but you're one of 2 people they want to give this wild card to, and the other person is
wild card for
Athens.
For Athens
Olympics.
Yeah.
He was from Zimbabwe. Rory Mackey was his name.
Yeah.
We were both bad swimmers, so I was like, well, if he's doing it, at least if we're off the back, me and him will be together.
Yeah.
He unfortunately got trampled by an elephant taking photos. Like the camera, the click scared it. He didn't get to go. He punctured his lung. Anyway, I went there. I was with Conrad Stoltz, and there was 3 of us out the back.
Yes, I remember.
So after that, I was done with triathlon. I was tired of chasing. Yeah. But again, after the Olympics, my dad was like, all right, you come back to Bermuda and working. Like, it's time to, and I was like, I really want to make it as a professional athlete, like as a triathlete.
Sure,
But I had this opportunity on literally one of the longest, it's called Vendée, which is, anyone in cycling will know it. It's one of I think it is the longest standing cycling team.
Okay.
It's been around for like 30, 40 years now.
Yeah.
And they paid you. It was amateur, but they paid you Division 1. So we moved to Nantes. They put us up in the team house. So for people who follow cycling, this is Direct Energies. That's what they're called now.
Okay.
Total Energy now.
Okay.
Sagan rode for them last year.
Yeah.
It's their feeder team.
Gotcha.
So we lived in France for 2 years, and that's when Nikki, my wife, switched to cycling. So then we were both cyclists. Then we moved to Girona because I got on Slipstream, which is now EF Education, with Jonathan Valter's team.
Right.
And we lived in Girona. And the funny thing is, in Girona then, there was no triathletes.
Okay.
One age group triathlete, coached by a pro that lived in Barcelona.
Okay.
Now it's a mecca for triathletes.
Sure.
And for anyone who's been to Girona, it's amazing. I'll sell that. Go visit it. But that also ties in Boulder, because we felt like when we did have to move to the U.S., we liked the European culture. We loved it and we missed it. We want to get back. But Boulder has a little bit of that.
Right.
It has a lot of Europeans who move here.
Yes.
But it has that, as far in the U.S., it has a bit of that European feel. So that was a big draw to us. So basically, my wife missed out on the Olympics. They put her as a reserve for, this is now...
For cycling, she missed off on the Olympics.
For Australia, Beijing.
08.
08. She was first Australian in all the selection races. She had an artery. She had to have an operation earlier in the year. They basically said, you're not at 100%. She's like, no, I'm not. But I've been top 10 in the World Cups.
Yeah.
Anyway, by her missing out on the Olympics, forced us to, hey, what are we doing?
Right.
I was stopping cycling.
Yeah.
There was no triathletes.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, let's move. If I'm going back to triathlon, she could get on a U.S. team, which she did. She didn't like cycling on a U.S. team.
Right.
And yeah, so long story short, we moved to Boulder, and it was like 2000, end of 2008, early 2009.
Right, exactly.
And it was there or California.
Thank you for bringing it, because I didn't want to gloss over it, because it's interesting. But you're like 2004 triathlete still, leave the sport, cyclist, both of you, such talent and such work ethic. So you guys go really hard 5, 6, 7, and then miss 8 for cycling. Now you're like, whoa, let's swing back to triathlon, right? So you arrive in the U.S.
So everything was a year. I went to cycling, and Nikki kept racing, and then she saw that the team did everything for me. They got your bikes.
Yeah.
You didn't have to chase sponsors. They gave you a helmet. They drove you to
Attractive.
races.
Yeah.
And it was attractive. And she got on a team the following year in just a little south.
Sure.
And it was cool. It was an experience that you can't like enter and do. It's not a Gran Fondo. It's not a you had to earn your way. And when I got on the team, they said, look, you can have 1 year. You ride well, you get ass back.
There you go.
So we lived 2 years in Nantes. Then we moved to Girona. Girona was amazing.
Yeah.
Slipstream covered. We lived in the old town. If anyone's been there, there's a cathedral. We literally could throw, if you have a good arm, you could throw.
I do.
You could throw a stone from our window to the cathedral. And then, and I'll tie that in again. We lived up the mountain. Anyone who knows Boulder, we lived up Deer Trail, which is up Lee Hill.
Yes.
So we're up at 7,500 feet,
So,
2,500 meters, which in Europe, you can't get to 2,500 meters without being at the top of literally
cold or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nice. I like this. And this is when, and I like to insert this now. This is, let's just call it 2009. You guys are new to Boulder, married couple, roll in. I think the triathlon scene is pretty good at that point here. We've got a lot of triathletes in mid-2000s, 05 through 15. We're like jamming. This is me, and this is what I hear. I'm sitting in a hot tub. I love sharing these stories that you haven't heard this, but I'm sitting in a hot tub after a swim, and I'm hot shit. No, I'm not. But I'm sitting here. I'm thinking about
you're there in your. I'm cutting you off again. You're there in your speedos that are like Superman speedos. I was gonna say you were in your prime then. I still look back at Boulder in 2009, and for me, because I was new to it. It was like the prime of Boulder.
It was. I believe that's true.
And I'm sure people moving to Boulder now will say the same. Like when you first moved to Boulder, those first couple years are amazing.
It's magic.
Exactly.
It's magic. And so, and despite my tiny Speedo, my point is I'm sitting in the hot tub and most everyone, and this is no kidding, this is my introduction to Tyler, is the couple people come in and they're like, did you hear? And I'm like, what? Tyler Butterfield is doing Ironman this year. It probably was the end of 2009, but I'm like, who? Because I wasn't following, but at that point I said, I'm not sure. It was, but then I sat for the next 8 minutes and heard like everybody just was saying, this guy's amazing. He's at Rally Sport. He does this, I think. Either way, I got this whole, and literally at that point, I think 2009, you did Ironman Cozumel, your first kind of foray into the long course. But that was my intro, was like, people were speaking of you like there's like basically, what a cool thing. This guy with all this history in the sport is now doing Ironman. And I was the Ironman person. So that was the intro. And then it was maybe 3 or 4 months later that I met you. And I was like, I like this guy. He just likes to talk. And I do too. So we talked for about an hour and a half.
In the hot tub.
In the hot tub, yeah. In our Speedos. Before it gets weird. So now I like to share that. That's when I first met you, kind of first heard of you. And then you did, you kind of took off with Ironman, and you were still racing with Nikki. And I kind of want to just get your first experience, because this is kind of part of a staple of our show. Is you guys had Savannah, your first child, in 2010 at the end of the year. You guys are both young and racing well and doing awesome. You're in Boulder. It is a sweet spot. Tell me about your first experience, kind of jumping off of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna bunny hop on what
Perfect.
you were saying. The coolest thing about Boulder is just like, again, how everything was so close, and it was. I mean, Dave was leading the swim sets.
That's right, Dave Scott.
And you were in the swim sets. You'd been top 10 in Kona. What was the? I think you twice, right?
3 times, yeah.
3, gee, sure. What was the second or the third time? Like at that
Something
era,
like that. Yeah,
was around one of your top 10s.
That's right.
Like it was just like, if you want to be good, put yourself around good people. And what I love, like the bad thing about Boulder though, but I was used to this from Bermuda, is there was the gossip, the rumor,
sure.
the small. But
yes.
I'm used to that. That's small countries. That's what you have.
Yep.
So it also teaches you be polite, do things well.
That's great.
So that you have people talking about you in a good light. So
nice.
I love how you were like, who? Because that's what makes you good. Is who he can do Ironman, but let's give him a year or two to prove himself. Because
for sure. I mean, and like so I love what you just said, because you kind of you got in and you adapted and you had the skill set to adapt to that. It was cliquey, it was a little bit small, and it was elite triathlon community, a lot of ego involved, but also at that time, Craig Alexander was here, and this guy won the Ironman 3 times, and he's right in that exact sphere. He's the real deal. I think you blended in well right there, right? You were training with him a bit, and he was kind of a guy that you learned from.
I mean, I just the other day I was riding and I said something. I was like, I was fortunate to copy Crowe, and I met Crowe from Macca. When they were good friends in Cronulla, I went and stayed with Macca because Macca stayed at my house.
Gotcha.
Right. When I was a 14-year-old kid.
Understood.
When he hadn't broken through. Yep. So it all sort of goes full circle. But that's what you get here. Is you get multiple world champs, and not just in triathlon.
For sure.
In multiple disciplines, like you'll be on an easy run and someone will run by. Yeah. And it's like you wave to them, they wave back, and you don't even know. If you don't follow it. Yeah, exactly. You don't know, and then someone will be like, "That guy just won the world title."
Totally.
That guy's in a gold medal Olympian. Or that girl just won, and it's so neat because you have and I think it's in every industry. I'm into sport, so I look at the sporting side of it. Right. But you have the best of the best. You have the middle that just don't know a little, and then you have the starting, and there's no sort of judgment.
That's cool.
It's not like that person's getting in our way, and that's what attracts us to Boulder.
For sure.
And my wife's from the Gold Coast. So it's also geographically, we're in the middle of Bermuda and Australia. So that helped. Oh, yeah. But a lot of it, we came here for sport. We came here to I was accepted into CU before Athens, and I deferred that. And I deferred 2 years in a row, so I had to reapply.
Right.
But by the time I reapplied, I was 26. Nikki was pregnant. I was just starting to make prize money, get sponsors, and I went to 1 or 2 classes, and I was like, I'm struggling. I'm dyslexic. I can't read. My 13-year-old daughter reads better than me, and I don't really like labels. I do use it a lot, but the reason I don't like it is because I still can't read because I used it to get around. Like
I see.
I found ways around. It wasn't like I wasn't intelligent enough to. I mean. In hindsight, I wasn't. I should have just learnt to read. Instead, I used it as a crutch, and I just never.
Fascinating.
So I did start at CU. I'm not a CU alumni.
You can still be a buff. You're still buff.
I still support him.
No, it's good.
But that was another attraction. Mm-hmm. But I sort of made my bed after Athens of I want to be all in, and I was.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
And I guess I'm trying to give testament to how great Boulder is.
Right.
Because anyone who's been to the Gold Coast in Australia is a pretty nice place to live.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
Standard of living in Bermuda, pretty hard to beat.
Pretty awesome.
And we would say Boulder actually is one of the few places that does trump them.
And you're that's cool. That's cool. Trumps it, and you're here, and now we're 15 years since you moved here. So when we get right into that, you're in this great triathlon scene. You and your wife are doing very well. Nikki and you are both training well, racing well, good international success. Were you right away feeling like we made the right choice, or did that take 6 months or a year?
No, right away we loved it.
Right away, okay.
We were coming from Europe, so in Girona there's lots of great restaurants.
Yeah.
We were used to that. But here, it's different, but there is lots of great restaurants.
Totally.
When you finish training, if you wanted to get out of that mode, Girona, sometimes you go out and have a good lunch, and like Nikki will say, "Well, I'd wear high heels at lunch." You weren't doing that.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's Spain. That is Spain. Yeah.
Here you're in casual clothes.
Lululemon.
Yeah. But it's probably the same now. If I was 20, I'd want to finish training and go down to Pearl Street and get a coffee. Yeah,
or Logan's. I think you kept Logan's alive for about 5 straight years. A coffee shop, sadly gone now, because you moved away from North Boulder. That's on you. Okay, so all right, you're here, highlights, just tell me this, and like right in, what would you say were kind of just some things that you absolutely love, 2 or 3 things that you just loved about Boulder? Like you're just like, oh my gosh, as an athlete, kind of early days before you really had a full family here.
We had a family pretty young.
I know.
So and it's still to this day.
Yeah.
I love Boulder because it's beautiful. The mountains, the flats, the altitude. Yeah. But it's also the people.
Yeah.
Like some of the stories, I think when I first moved here, we lived on 47th Street over by Kings Ridge. And there's 2 New Zealand athletes. I think one is working for New Zealand now, and the other one's working. He actually, when the tour comes on, he's the commentator now. Sam Bewley and Jesse. Jesse's working for New Zealand, but they live just around the corner.
Yeah.
And they were on the Live Strong team, and we did silly things. Like one day we'd go for a ride, and I was on my road bike from my French cycling team that I put tri-bars on.
Sure.
Like my first 2 years of racing, or 1.5 years, I did not have a tri-bike. It was a road bike,
Gotcha.
made as tri as possible.
Yeah.
But we were just like, let's go up Super James. And we ride our bikes every day. And one day I was like, I'm going to go up in my big ring, which was a 55. And so that was we didn't have Strava. So you'd make your own, like, sort of, can I make it? Like, I don't know.
You?
I did, but I probably, my knees were hurting the next day.
Yeah.
But it was the people you meet along the way. And there's still, and a lot of them have stayed here. A lot of them go away and they'll come back and visit. Yeah. Just because it is such a unique place. The highlight for me is this. There's so many cool restaurants. There's so many cool climbs. There's so many cool hikes.
Yeah. People.
Yeah, but it's the people that make the place.
I love that. And that's what endures. So thank you for sharing that, because I think you and I didn't train much together, but I never forget when we really got to know you, and Nikki, Savannah was born and we visited you, and it was kind of like, here's a connection that we formed in 2010 that really is probably why we're friends now, because we had that, I think, off the training course, off the race course. And so I'm not saying I was one of those people, but I'm saying that is, to me, what it's all about, those relationships.
Sure. You guys, I still remember we had, we were young parents. I think I was 27 and Nikki was 28. It might've been 6 and 7. Savannah was born, and you guys were the first people to come over, and like, some brought food. I think you guys did bring food as well. But you brought these little moccasins, and they went from Savannah to Walker. I don't think they made it to the next 2.
I think I worn it. Walker. He ruined the slippers. Anyway, go ahead.
But it's people that, and it's not like you and me had trained together for hours.
Correct.
Like you have these people that when you're training and they're your training buddies, you build a relationship because you spend so many hours together.
That's for sure.
We were just at the pool.
Yeah.
And generally you'd be making jokes and we'd be laughing, and then we'd go do the set and we all go home and we'd say hello. Like, we're cordial, but we weren't like best buddies.
Correct.
I'd say we've gotten closer as we've gotten older because of kids, because we have more time. We have we're at the
more
pool
time,
together.
more energy. Yeah. I like it. I know, for sure, Tyler. That's good stuff. Coming back, okay. And then so I love that, and I think calling out all those amazing features, and then saying people are the highlight. If you were kind of just to say too, and this is a nice thing, if you have someone moving here, and this is just, we're going to go this early, like someone's moving here or they've just moved here and they're struggling, is there a tip that you'd give them? Is there some sort of advice from your perspective that would help them kind of find their way or make it in Boulder?
For sure. If you've moved here and you're struggling, I doubt that will be the case. But if you are, join a group.
Okay.
Today I was at Julie's swim squad.
Okay.
Julie Dibbins. Podium in Kona. That's the coach on deck. That's awesome. And friendly.
Amazing.
My son's homeschooled and he got to jump in today.
That's great.
And then certain things are just by getting out there. Like things I would say you have to do. I've ridden Alpe d'Huez. I've ridden in Europe. You have to ride Trail Ridge. There is. Okay. I know in some of your other episodes you've asked what has changed.
Yeah.
The traffic has changed.
Yes.
There is more traffic now, but that's because it's a beautiful place. You can't have a beautiful place that stays hidden forever. More and more people are moving here, but try not to go on the weekend. But Trail Ridge Road.
Tell folks what that means. A little bit of snapshot, because you've done it. I've done it, but a lot of people are like, huh?
Yeah. If you're an endurance junkie, ride from Boulder.
Okay.
But that's 180 kilometers is the shortest.
Okay.
So that's, I guess, 112 miles.
112 miles, yeah.
If you want to go less traffic, you go up South St. Vrain, which is around 200.
Okay.
So that's like 120. The first time I ever did it was I went South St. Vrain. I had all day. I did it on a Friday.
Good for you.
And then Julie wrote me that night and said, hey, we're doing Trail Ridge tomorrow. And I was like, I just did it today.
Oh, shame.
And I did it with her anyway.
Yeah, you did it twice.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
So then we went up straight.
Company.
But anyone who doesn't know me knows my maybes are generally yeses.
Yeah. Including this podcast.
Yes, exactly.
It was a strong maybe on Tuesday night.
Maybe I don't think that'll work. Okay, we're in. I don't like saying no.
I like that. I love that actually.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I would say, Sanitas. Go up Sanitas.
Okay.
You'll get some people that are on a hike that don't want to talk.
Yeah.
You'll get some people that don't wave, but there's not many. But most people will give you a smile.
Okay.
Most people have their dog out. Like once you're out and about, something somewhere, someone will connect with you. And if you get the one or two people on their bad day, don't let it bother you. That's anywhere in the world.
For sure.
You're gonna have someone who's having a bad day. I'd say just getting out. Go to a coffee shop, or take your dog for a walk if you have a dog, or go on a hike on Sanitas, or go on a bike ride, and you will bump into someone who's friendly, who says, hey, and you will find connections. Like the connections here are incredible.
That's such a good, you know what? I love your advice. I really appreciate that. And so let's just say distilling it down, you're struggling, go out, or if you aren't clicking, go out there and do those amazing things because if someone's doing an amazing thing next to you,
yeah.
It's going to enrich the experience. There, it's like you're going to find someone that you like to interact with.
Yeah, and not just if you're new here.
Sure.
Say you've lived here since 2009. You're a dad of 4, and you're struggling. And just yesterday, I rode with a buddy, and I literally came home, and Nikki's like, "Wow, that must have been good." And it was just chatting,
connecting, chatting.
Yeah.
Yes,
and not,
I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very good.
It's just like you just get out, and you're like, "Okay, it doesn't get much better than this."
No, that's brilliant. And so, reminds me, you mentioned Sanitas, you mentioned Trail Ridge. If we were to stay here for a minute before, would you say that you had a favorite, or is it too hard for a trail run or hike or bike ride?
I just got it. Like I had totally forgot about it. Like, a friend of mine, we do a bit of trail running now.
Okay.
I sort of just got into it, and I'm not into it.
Yeah.
I follow him. I forget how to get to half the trails. I forget the names of it.
Yes.
And he's patient with me. He's like, yeah, we did this one the other day. This is Bear, or this is Green.
Okay.
He took
good
me on
for
a
you.
couple
Yes.
of them. But yeah, Shadow, Bear, Green, Mountain. I mean, he took me on these, and I was like, wow, I've lived here since 2009. I've never done them, and they're amazing. Like, there's so much I don't know.
Okay.
Because I've been in the racing bubble.
Yeah.
And then after that, we had a year where we sort of got out of it, and now we're in the parenting kids. All our kids have activities. We used to not travel to Bermuda or Australia because of our racing schedule. And now this summer, my son has swim meets. My daughter has horse shows. Yeah. And again, next weekend, there's a horse show and a swim meet at the same time, but we can make it work.
Yes. Yes.
It's everything is close here, but everything here is at a pretty high level, which is neat. In Bermuda, the advantage is everything's close.
Yeah.
And you have so many people that can carpool.
Can pull you, yeah.
But you are restricted at the level of it, which is why most people go to boarding schools. Or
Oh,
go
right.
away.
Yeah, to get to that, and out of the small pond, you want to be the big,
Exactly. And that's why triathlon succeeds there, because you can it's 3 sports.
It's 3 sports,
So the level of those sports is not at the top level in each sport.
Yeah.
But when you tie in 3 sports, it's suddenly at a very high level.
It's fantastic.
And the junior program there is great.
It's quite good. Yeah. And so now, look, I mean, the environment you came from and where you guys both have gotten here, you and Nikki, now are sort of where I want to bring to today. You just referenced it. So you spend your days, you give to one another. You guys do cool stuff exercise-wise, you just referenced. But like, would you say how you spend your time is a lot focused on the kids? Your kids do some cool stuff. Like what's a day in the life of the Butterfield family?
Yeah, I mean, so my wife homeschools 4 kids, which started because of COVID. She thinks the kids all have, similar to me, we know my daughter's dyslexic, so she was falling behind. She was in a very good school, but the school has to keep up with everyone.
Yeah, it's tough. Oh, yeah.
It has to move on. If there's one kid that's struggling.
Yeah. Left behind.
Yeah, exactly. You'll try harder. It's not that they're not trying, but at a certain point, it's like that kid has to figure out another way. And she used to have a tutor at school, before school. And I loved this school. If we ever went back, we'd go back to that same school. It was Rocky Mountain Christian Academy. And I recommended a friend.
Sure.
Hadley's kids go there now. James
Yes,
Hadley.
I know. They told me about that. Yeah.
And so again, just another great person. Like he was here, moved here for triathlon. He's now started a restaurant. It's just the people and what is possible here.
So you guys, so the homeschooling, you said Savannah's doing horse shows. Walker's quite good at swimming. He's taken off. Grace is in everything. I mean, ballet, swimming.
Yeah.
She can do it all.
She used to have a triple day. Used to go ballet, swimming to gymnastics, and we switched that.
Yeah, I remember those days.
So yeah, the day in the life of, I'm doing a bit of coaching.
Yeah.
Because I distracted myself from that
That's
question.
good. We're back.
And that's great because most afternoons I'm driving them around to their activities.
Yeah.
And for a while that was great because I could take them all.
Okay.
And it meant my wife could catch up on stuff because she's teaching them in the day.
Yeah.
So coaching is a great way for me to give time to the athletes. Yes. Right now I'm coaching pros. I like that. It's not
good for you.
I want to see people get more out of themselves. I spent 20 years as a pro. I was self-coached for a lot of them. My first coach actually they let me in because I was from Bermuda, but he was the Australian high performance director.
Okay.
So he had to he wrote the selection for one of the Olympics.
Right.
And Nikki was in the AAS. I have a lot of dabbles with experiences that I can pass on.
You look. Let's say you didn't go to CU. You actually have a PhD in triathlon. I mean, you do upper level.
Well, what I'd say
double
is
masters.
I'm not an expert at anything.
Yeah.
I'm not. I even in coaching, I don't have a coaching degree, but I have years of experience. So it's if you're happy with that, and me telling my either success stories and my failures and why you don't want to do this and why a year later I learned not to do that. And just, again, the people around here, I got to learn from Crowy, 5-time world champ.
Well,
I met him through Macca. And then you go on a ride with Rini, who you've had on the show.
Yes.
I remember once having stomach issues and something, and she gave me a tip. She was just like, well, maybe you should do this.
Maybe don't eat the pizza.
Yeah. Be a little, I think the tip that one was be a little more gluten sensitive leading into a race, or it's don't change anything crazy, but just be a little more professional the last couple of days, or don't eat too much fiber. And I learned a lot of experience through because I'm not a reader. I learned through talking. I learned through asking questions. I learned through, hey, how do you do this? And when you ask 10 people and 8 of them all do the same thing, you're like, that's worked.
That sounds good.
I didn't always follow the 20. The two two things they didn't do, but when you line up and hold on, all these people are doing this, and that's what you get here.
Yes,
where else can you go and get so many experienced people in a small place?
Well, you're that person, and I think that you're right. This is unique, but I say you're one of those people because again, you're very, very humble now. You're saying, "Well, I have this, have that," and that's good. If I were a young athlete, I would reach out to you because to me, what really counts is what you just said. You know the errors, you know what not to do, you know what works, and you're going to be able to share it in a real world way because that's how you absorbed it. To me, that's brilliant. So I love that you're coaching. I love how you guys spend a lot of time with the kids, which is always close to my heart, very family centered, family focused. Other stuff, if you just said, hey, and you mentioned it, you rode yesterday, and I know the answer here, I'm going to cue you up. Any running or any big races on the calendar or anything we should talk about there from a marathon standpoint or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I just did Boston, but then I had an injury leading in. One thing I'm going to say is when you said if you're a young athlete, reach out, I'd say don't reach out. Don't reach out to me. But if you're a young athlete,
pro athlete, okay,
move to Boulder.
Yeah, okay,
and
good.
There's a young Bermuda kid, Tyler Smith, moved here. Erica Hawley, she's gonna I think make the Olympics for Bermuda as well with Flora. She moved here, and they're doing well. I love that. I've yet to meet someone move to Boulder and go backwards.
Okay,
if that makes sense. Doesn't mean you're going to be a world champ or an Olympian, but you will improve.
That's great.
It's very hard to move here. So from a sporting background, for the same reason I did, it's the same today.
Understood.
Put yourself around.
Okay, I do enjoy that. Maybe consider hiring Tyler later.
No, I can't. I can only handle 3. I give too much time. Okay. I would think. I got
That's what we've gotten to. That's it. There's no room. His roster's full.
And my kids.
Check back later.
7 people.
Okay, good stuff. All right, tell me this real quick. I can't go past this. What if you don't go out a lot? I know this. I've been out with you a few times. If you had a restaurant you've been to, you just have to recommend. Is there a restaurant, dinner, lunch, anything that you just want to call our attention to? And of course, the follow-up, since Logan's is closed, where do you go for your coffee these days?
Because I live
home.
I make one at home, but as well, I hit up both the ones in Niwot.
What are they? Yeah, tell us.
Why Not Cafe and Old Oak, which is on 2nd Street. We call it 2nd Street. We don't actually call it by its name.
Yeah.
Both the owners, Old Oak was a school teacher, and Chris from Why Not is awesome. I remember when I was sponsored by On, I had a pair of shoes that didn't work for me, and I had a new pair in a box, and I was like, the other pair didn't, and I remember just giving him, and he's like, you're awesome. Like,
that's
to just
amazing.
Come in. He saw me wearing them. He's like, those are those new Swiss shoes. And you know what? He had another pair, and I was like, you like them? What size are you? And we were the same size. It's just connections.
Community.
And Mary Jo is the barista who's there most days.
Okay.
At Why Not? So those are the 2 coffee shops I hit up. Restaurant again in Niwot. I'm going to sell Niwot. Is it 1921 or 1920?
1914.
That's it. I just know that's my dyslexia coming in. I know the first 2, and there's only one restaurant that's 19 something. So 1914, and Ivan O'Gorman and Anne Marie and yourself. We
went to Faro.
We did, but then we did 1914 separately because they couldn't make it. But when I go out, I generally like to ask a friend and to ask someone who knows a lot more about food than I do. And Ivan, he's the one who shows me around.
Ivan's the guy.
Yeah, Ivan's the guy. For bike fits, for restaurants, for fashion, for if you want to
hair gel.
Yeah, I want to. The other day I saw him with his mullet, and I was like, "Is that a 20-year-old kid or is that Ivan?" And it was actually Ivan. He looked young with that.
He's someone to put on the list. Okay, no, you're spot on. And just a horrible thing to mention there, a 1914 house closing in July. I know.
What do you mean? It's closing?
Just in. So go. But the point is go, because it's fantastic. Great recommendations. We didn't touch on this, but you guys being Niwot residents, been there a long time. That's your jam.
Is it closing for permanently?
Ever. I know.
I'd be surprised if that doesn't reopen.
Well, we were thinking about it, and so just putting this out there, a friend of mine and I were talking about taking it over, calling it 1915. So if you want to invest in a restaurant, let's talk.
My mom had a restaurant. Restaurants are not great investments, but that one would be
awesome. Yeah, let's talk. I've got about $8 I can contribute. So we'll look at that. So great tips. So again, just close us out with, tell us your perfect, you pick it. Pick the day of the week, the company you choose. What's the perfect day? We see Tyler Butterfield enjoying Boulder County. You can start to finish. And if you're all alone riding Trail Ridge, that's okay. But just tell us what you think is the best way to spend your day. I'm talking to give you more time. I'm buying you time. So letting the brain.
And it has changed. Years ago, it might have been riding by myself, but now it would definitely, I've done so many years riding. I want to be with people.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's going to sound cliche, but
I like it.
Most days are so pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I get down, but most days are pretty good that it would just be a normal day. It would be literally going to Julie's swim, and then after
podcast.
We had podcast. But recently I've been riding with Merrick.
Okay.
And it's riding with him or riding with a buddy. You and me did a couple rides. And then in the afternoon, I'm driving my kids around, watching my kids thrive at what they want to do. The reason my son went to swimming, he's in a program for homeschool, and they have their party tonight, and he was going to miss his swim class, and he's really taken to swimming the last year. And he's like, I don't want to miss my swim, but I don't want to miss the school party. And so we went to Julie's.
That's so cool.
But it's like seeing them thrive in the afternoon. I mean, as a parent, I think to get a little bit of activity, and then again, to check in with my athletes. One's going to a race, one's coming back from a race. Like, them improving and thriving, the athletes I coach, is rewarding for me. For when I can say, look, this is what I did. And I sometimes have to say to them, I didn't go to college. I can't be like, hey, this book at this paragraph tells you what to do. It's, I was here, I did this, it didn't go well. I did this, it did go well. And this is what generally a sports scientist will say, have a gel every X amount of time. And I've been on rides with young people who've had issues in races that I don't coach, and been like, you just talk through what they're doing, and you're like that. You might want to add a couple more gels. Like, to have 1 or 2 gels on a bike ride in a 70.3, you're going to struggle on the run, and suddenly And just hearing the reward of, hey, that worked. Thank you for that. Like that comment. I mean, I do over talk, but it's nice when someone says, hey, that comment you said, I went and researched it, or I asked someone else, but it was a seed to do a bit of research and fix something that wasn't going right. So for me, a great day would just be if I got 2 sports out. Like right now, I'm itching to go back running because I pulled my calf.
Yes. No, that sums it up. I mean, to me, it resonates with me. You just described my perfect day as well. A little bit of you time, a little bit of watching the kids shine. So well said. That's brilliant. I actually just realized that I need a gel. And so it's only because I tend to bonk. In all seriousness, you're awesome. I always want to give you the opportunity to say, hey, I really wanted to touch on something that you didn't ask. If something registers, awesome. But in the meantime, while you think about that, I would always say thank you so much because it's fun. I see you. I talk to you every week. But to have you here and share your story is special. So thank you for being here with us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I like how you said sort of basically, hopefully someone can listen to this and get something resonates or sticks and it helps them.
Yes.
Like they're having a bad day and they're like, you know what? On Michael's podcast, Tyler said, just go out. And they go out and they bump into someone that brightens their day. Because, I do talk a lot. But I sounds like I'm trying to talk about myself. But honestly, I really just want other people to get a light or a seed that sparks something for them out of an experience I had.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And it does resonate. And I promise you people heard a lot of that and are going to take action with that. So I feel like you're a brother from another mother. Thank you for, have I ever used that expression? I wonder, but no, really, I do. We click well. Tyler, thank you so much for the time. This has been another fun conversation. And before the next one, I will encourage you and everyone to go out there and do something that you love.